We're holding Tzadik Vav Amud Aleph. We're finishing up Perek Asiri and starting Perek Yud Aleph. So we discussed over here, we went in from topic to topic. We went into the topic of holes in vessels. Holes in vessels, when does it make the vessel no more a vessel and therefore no more able to receive tumah? So he went through different measurements. So the smallest measurement we gave was when it leaks, when some liquid drips out, but that only disqualifies a gistra. A gistra means a drip catcher. If you have a broken piece of earthenware, which is only used as a drip catcher, and then it has a drip, then it's disqualified, it's not mikabel tumah. But any other keli, even a keli designated for liquids, even if it drips, it's still mikabel tumah because you just put a drip catcher under it and they can still use it. Says the Gemara like this. Amar Rav Asi. Says Rav Asi. Shoinin. We have learned. It's an interesting expression. It's not a typical expression for the Talmud Bavli. I think it is a more typical for Talmud Yerushalmi. Shoinin. It's similar to Tanur Rabbanon, but it's in Hebrew. Shoinin, we have learned Kli Cheres, an earthenware keli designated for liquids. Shiuroi, which hole disqualifies it? The koinis mashke. When you push it down from the outside on water, and water will seep in through that hole, then it's disqualified. However, moitzi mashke, if it just drips, but if you push it on water, it will not seep inside, it's still mekabel tumah. V'loi amru, and they never said the concept of moitzi mashke, that if something drips, it's not mekabel tumah anymore. Elo le'inyan gistera bilvad, only for a drip catcher. My time, why? If you tell me that drip does not disqualify something, so why does it disqualify the drip catcher? Simple. You don't bring a drip catcher to catch the drip of a drip catcher. If you have a regular keli and it's dripping, so then you bring a drip catcher to catch the drip. But if the whole purpose of this piece of earthenware is to catch the drip and it's dripping, then it's useless. Then you just throw it away. You don't keep it and get a drip catcher for that. And therefore it disqualifies a gistra. Fine. Amar Ula. Pligi ba today amiroi b'ma'arovin. There were two amiroim in Eretz Yisrael which had an argument about it. They don't know what the it is. About holes, obviously. The question is which hole. So Rashi says they were arguing about a hole in a flower pot. A hole in a flower pot which makes that the plant inside is considered connected to the ground. So Rava said the size of the hole to make it connected is like the smallest root. But we're going to have a machlokes whether that's the measurement. Tosfos says the machlokes is regarding tzomit posil, regarding having it in a oil hameis when there's a dead body and you have a vessel and it's sealed but there's a hole. The question is also maybe the hole is sealed or not. That's another question. Which size of a hole makes it no more protecting, that should not anymore protect whatever's inside from becoming tummy. So Rava earlier said that it's the majority of the keli, or maybe even the size of a pomegranate, if it's a smaller or a larger keli, as we learned. So they're going to have a machlokes, what's the size? So either it's about a flower pot, or it's about saving an oil hameis. So there was a machlokes between two amiroim in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi Yosi bar Avin and Rabbi Yosi bar Zavda. Two Rabbi Yosis. One the son of Rabbi Avin and one the son of Zavda. Chad Omer Kemoit Sirimim. One says the size of a pomegranate, like the conclusion we had before. V'chad Omer Kishoirish Cotton. And one said the size of a small root. Says the Gemara V'simonich, How will you remember what are the two opinions? Because there are more measurements. For example, there's the measurement of a size of an olive. So maybe I might get confused and think that one of the opinions says that if the hole is the size of an olive, that's what's needed to make the flower, the plant connected. That's what disqualifies it from saving an oil hameis. How will I remember? So that the siman is echod hamarbe ve'echod hamamid. It's a quote taken out of context, obviously. The context is that if someone brings a large korban or a small korban, in both cases, Hashem is happy with his korban if he has good intentions. But we're taking it out of context. Echod hamarbe. One of the opinions said the largest measurement. Ve'echod hamamid. And one of the opinions said the smallest measurement. Between the measurements, the smallest measurement is the size of a pomegranate. The smallest measurement is the size of a small root. So the machlokes is with the two extremes. Echad amar, but one says the largest measurement, the size of a pomegranate, and one says the smallest measurement, the size of a small root. Fine. Okay. Amar Rav Chinina bar Kana Mishmei Rabbi Lezer, Kli cheres shiuroi kemoitzi zeisim. He says that the size of earthenware keli is the size of olives falling out. Now, really, obviously, the Chayre is talking about it is designated for food, not for liquids. Now, really, it's a clear Mishnah. But earlier, Rava said that if I designated it for pomegranates, then it's still tar, it's still mikabel tuma until it has the size of a pomegranate. Comes this, what's his name? Rav Chinina bar Kana in the name of Rabbi Lezer and says, no, if it has the size of an olive, olives can fall out, it's tar. No matter what you designated it for, it's tar. Supporting what this Rav Chinina said, another Amud said in the name of the same Rabbi Lezer, it's like vessels, like utensils made out of glolim, out of fertilizer, out of rocks, out of earth, but not baked, just dried, which they're not mekabel tuma. They're not mekabel tuma. So, what is he trying to say? That's emphasizing what we said before, that no matter what you designated it for, it's not mekabel tuma. Just like if it was made out of a material which is never mekabel tuma, it was made out of rocks, made out of raw earth, then it's not mekabel tuma no matter what. So too, if it has a hole the size of an olive, it's not mekabel tuma no matter what. But regarding saving from becoming tummy in oil hameis, there it does save, even if it has the hole the size of an olive, until the majority is broken, just like Rava said. There he agrees to Rava. But regarding the size of the hole that would make it no more mekabel tuma, he holds in the name of Rabbi Lezer that when it has the hole the size of an olive, it's not mekabel tuma no matter what you designated it for. So we learned over here the explanation why a drip catcher, when it has a hole that just lets things drip out, it's not mekabel tuma, because you don't put a drip catcher for a drip catcher. Then there's a machlokes, let's say according to Rashi, regarding a flower pot. What's the size of the hole that makes it connected to the ground? According to one, it's the size of a small root, and according to one, it's the size of a pomegranate. And the Gemara gives a simmer that you should remember that one says the largest, one says the smallest. Echod amar be'echod amamit. Then we had an Amud on the name of Rabbi Lezer, which says that once a vessel has the hole the size of an olive, it's not mekabel tuma no matter what you designated it for. Just like it would be made out of a material, that's another Amud added on. Just like it was made out of a material which is not mekabel tuma, made out of rock, made out of fertilizer, made out of raw earth, then it's not mekabel tuma. No matter what's here, also no matter what, but it can still save things if it's an oil hameis until the majority was broken. Fine. Now we're starting a new Perek. Hazorik. You could, if you want to say something, you can unmute. We're starting a new Perek. Hazorik. Regarding.
You translated Evan rock. It's not rock, it's a stone.
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 Right. Stone, yeah, you're right. Stone.
And glalim, by the way,
yes,
they make it from what comes out of horses and cows, which you put together
and
you dry it in the sun.
Okay.
Then you make a keli out of it. And actually, sometimes you use it to burn as the burning material as well, instead of wood.
Very good. Okay.
Anyway.
So we're starting now, Perek HaZorik. It's discussing removing from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim. So typically removing is you hold it in your hand. So he starts off to say that if you throw it, you're also chayiv. Okay, I don't know if that's a big chiddush. The main chiddush is that we're going to discuss another situation. The situation is if you will throw something from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid through Rishus HaRabim. So before we get to that, there's another thing called moishit. If you pass something from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid through Rishus HaRabim, so it depends on which direction the Rishus HaYochid and Rishus HaRabim are. We'll see it in the Mishnah. If it's in a row, if you have like one side of the street of the road, and you have a few porches one after another, and you pass something from one porch to the other, it's a Isur Deiraisa. Why? Because they did it in the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, they would pass beams from one wagon to the other in one row. And therefore, when you do it, you're also chayiv, because you're doing something which you did in the Mishkan. If you pass something across the road, from porch to porch, then it's not a Yisur Deiraisa. It's not a Yisur Deiraisa. Why? Because they would never pass the beams in the Mishkan from one row to the other. They had like a row of wagons. They would pass it on one from one to the other in one row, but not from one side to the other. However, if you throw from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid through Rishus HaRabim, yeah? So in the Mishkan, they wouldn't break it. They don't want to hurt anyone. It wasn't respectful. They would never throw the beams. So if I throw something across the road or on the same side of the road, from one porch to another porch, I'm not doing something which I did in the Mishkan. I'm not removing from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaRabim, so I should be potter. But Rabbi Kiva comes and says, no, you're chayiv. We'll see soon why. Basically, the idea is he holds that when something enters the space of a Rishus, it's as if it rested there. It's called kluta kemi shehuncha. If it was trapped in the space, kluta, it's as if it was put down there. He argues in this whole concept. We had this in the beginning of the Masechta, if you remember. He argues in the whole concept of that it has to have hanacha, that it has to rest on something which is 4 by 4 tefachim. No, if it entered the space, it's like on the ground, and therefore you're already chayiv. And therefore, if you throw it from one porch to the other, then you'll be chayiv. Let's see inside. Hazorik, one who throws Rishus HaYochid Rishus HaRabim, or Rishus HaRabim Rishus HaYochid chayiv. If you throw from one property, from one domain to another, you're chayiv. The chiddush is Rishus HaYochid Rishus HaYochid Rishus HaRabim be'emtza. If you throw from one private domain to another, it was passing through Rishus HaRabim. Rabbi Kiva mechayiv, as we'll see in the Gemara why. V'chachamim poitrim. Chacham say it's potter. Ketzad. Oh, give me just 1 second. 1 second. Second. Okay. Ketzad. Let's see an example. Shteik zuz trois, 2 porches, zu connected zu, on an opposite side of the street. B'rishus HaRabim, hamoishid, whether you pass, v'hazodik, whether you throw mizulu zu from one to the other, potter. However, if they were both on the same side of the road, hamoishit for sure chayiv. But v'hazoyrik potter, according to Rabbanon, if you throw it, you're potter. So why is passing it chayiv? Shekach choysa avodas haLevim. That's the way the Levim used to work in the Beis Hamikdash. Shtei agoli zu achar zu b'shus Rabin. There would be two wagons, one after the other in the street. Meshit in akrashim mizu lezu. They would pass the beams from one to the other. Avaloi zarkim, they would never throw it. And therefore, only passing is considered the malacha. Throwing is not considered the malacha. And Rabbi Kiva says, you're right, it wasn't in the Mishkan, but since it passed in the street, it's as if it rested in the street, and therefore he'll be chai. Actually, interesting, we'll see later in the Gemara, there's a discussion whether Rabbi Kiva spoke about higher than 10 tefachim or not. Higher than 10 tefachim in the street is not really called the Rishus Rabbim. It's called the Mokim Ptur. It's not part of the Rishus Rabbim. And therefore, you would say, even if it's trapped in the space, but it's not a Rishus Rabbim. But on the other hand, some say no. If it entered a space, it's as if it rested on the floor. And therefore, it's considered that you're chayiv. Now, porches typically are higher than 10 tefachim from the ground. And therefore, if you throw from one porch to the other, it's passing the space higher than 10 tefachim. So really, the word in the Mishnah which says keitzad, which means as if the case of the two porches is explaining the machlokes between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbanon, is the version of one opinion. The opinion which says that Rabbi Akiva says that even if you threw it in the air over 10 tefachim, you're chayiv. He says in the Mishnah keitzad, because Rabbi Akiva says you're chayiv even from a porch to a porch. However, the opinion which says, as we'll see soon, that only below 10 tefachim you're chayiv, above 10 tefachim you're not chayiv, then he does not read in the Mishnah the word keitzad. In other words, the two porches are not explaining Rabbi Akiva and Chacham's machlokes. Rather, it's a separate thing, which everyone agrees to, even Rabbi Akiva. Even Rabbi Akiva agrees that if you threw it higher than 10 tefachim, it's potter. But if you pass it, you're chayiv, because that's the way they did it in the Mishkan. So, we spoke about throwing from one rishus to the other, that it's just like carrying, fine. I guess don't say that it's an unusual way and therefore you'll be potter. No, it's a usual way. However, from one rishus hayachid to another rishus hayachid through rishus Rabbim, it's a machlokes Rabbi Akiva and Chachamim, as we'll see in the Gemara. Why? Passing something from rishus hayachid to rishus hayachid through rishus Rabbim depends if it's on the same side of the road or the opposite side of the road. The same side of the road, you're chayiv, because they did it in the Mishkan. They would pass the beams from one wagon to the other. On an opposite side of the road, you're potter, because they never did that in the Mishkan. They would never pass it from one end to the other, and throwing it, they never did in the Mishkan, and therefore that would be potter according to Rabbanan. So again, to summarize, the Gemara explained why a kister, a drip catcher, if it has a hole the size of a trip, it's not Mekabel Tuma, although any other vessel with that hole would be Mekabel Tuma. The reason is because usually if a vessel has a drip, you bring a drip catcher. But if a drip catcher has a drip, then you throw it away. It's useless. It's only here to catch the drip. If it's not catching the drip, I don't need it. Then we had a machlokes about the size of the hole of a flower pot, let's say according to Rashi. When does it make it connected to the ground? According to one opinion, it has to be the size of a pomegranate. The other opinion has to be the size of the smallest root. Says the Gemara, echod amar be'echod amamit. One says the largest, one says the smallest. Then we had an Amira in the name of Rabbi Lezer saying that a hole the size of an olive disqualifies an earthenware keli from being tummy. And another Amira adds that it's similar to the vessel made out of fertilizer, out of stone, or out of raw earth. Which means to say that even if I designated it for pomegranates, it's still not Mekabel Tuma. Not like what Rabbi said, that it depends what I designated it for. No. Once it has a hole the size of an olive, it's gone. That's the Rabbi Lezer's opinion. But even he agrees that it could still save when it's sealed in oil and mace until the majority of it was broken. Then we mentioned that throwing from one domain to the other, you're still chayiv. If you throw from Rishus HaYochid to Rishus HaYochid through Rishus Rabbi, Chacham say you're potter, because he never did that in the Mishkan. Rabbi Kiva says you're chayiv because when it enters the ear of Rishus Rabbi, it's as if it rested over there. Passing from Rishus HaYochid through Rishus Rabbi, so if it's on the opposite side of the road, everyone agrees that he's potter because he never did that in the Mishkan. If it's on the same side of the road, everyone agrees that he's chayiv because they did that in the Mishkan. They would pass it from wagon to wagon. They would pass the beams. They would never throw it. It would only be on that same row, and it was higher than 10 tefachim. And that's something you did in the Mishkan. If they did it in the Mishkan, then for sure you're chayiv for that. Okay.